Good afternoon. There we go. Afternoon. So I have the great honor of introducing our next speaker. A little bit, I'll talk about Fadi here a little bit, but so our next presentation is the Mideast to the Midwest. It's a pretty inspiring story. So a story to motivate about the journey of a first-generation Iraqi-American who sought political asylum in the U.S. after serving as an interpreter during the war. He grew up toying with computers in Baghdad and is now the Chief Information Officer for Minneapolis Public School District. So with that, I'm going to introduce Fadi Fadhil.
Good afternoon. Is this working? Okay. Do you remember this day? On this day, I was 2 weeks away from execution. You see, what happened was when I was in middle school, I watched this movie. It's called War Games with Matthew Broderick. It's about this high school computer genius who hacked his school grades, and the movie takes on. That was the spark that ignited in my head, and I realized this is what I want to do. I want to be a computer genius. And then I proceeded to watch a lot of American movies. At the time, I was born the year Saddam was in charge or took power. So Western media and American media was banned, and we used to get them through smuggled VHS tapes. I got really into American movies. I learned the language from there. One of my favorite shows was Friends. And I proceeded to study in the field of computers, and I got my bachelor's in computer engineering and master's in computer networking. And on the day of my graduation to get my master's, I woke up very happy and excited, and was just looking at life, and I thought it's just going to take off from there. Though Saddam regime had other plans for me. When we were at a certain age in high school, they would come around to the schools and they hand out these papers. You have to sign a pledge of allegiance to the regime of Saddam. And if you don't do that, you have to do it through when they do the census at home. So when they came to school, I said, I was signed through home. And when they came through home, I said, I signed through school. You see, all these American movies that put these crazy ideas about freedom, of self-determination, just messed me up. So I started getting cute with it. So I went through my bachelor's program. I got through my master's program. Nobody caught it. Millions of Iraqis do it, and if you don't, they'll execute you and your family. It's nothing that they prosecute you alone. It just means you're a bad seed. You know, they wonder what else does your family talk about at home. What I did not know is with the master's program having a lot less people, they screen you one by one. And it's also a lot of FTEs to get the process so tightened. So they had a different plan. As I was walking to get my, to go through the ceremony, they came over and they put a bag on my head, and they made a spectacle out of it in front of the campus and said, that's what happens when you try to do that. I was named a political prisoner, and I was taken to a political prison. These things, when you're a political prisoner, you do not get a name, you're just a number, and you go to a building that doesn't have a sign on it. Nobody wants to touch it, nobody wants to deal with it. If your family asks about you, they'll be next, because why are you asking about him? He's a bad seed. Do you support what he did? You should renown him as well. We used to call it the hotel, because there were so many. And it's a very fancy hotel because your inmates are very, very cool people. They're politicians, reporters, university professors, people who spoke up, or maybe watched some American movies, I don't know. And they had to go through so many people. So basically, when you go to the hotel, you know you have 4 weeks, and that's how they cycle through. What happened in that place was inhumane. The torture, the humiliation, it was something that makes you lose faith in humanity. And I had stayed there for 2 weeks. When I was there, my life was flashing before me. I found myself thinking about the happiest days of my life, family, my journey, the food, the friends. It was so vivid. You could smell it, you could see the colors. It was never so precious. And then that day happened. So what happened is that when the guards saw that statue fallen on TV, they unlocked the prison cells and fled. I got a second shot. Everyone in that place got a second shot. That statue falling literally saved my life. A few months later, I'm recovered from my injuries, and I'm driving downtown Baghdad in one of the most busy streets, Haifa Street. And while I was on the traffic, on the side there was an army colonel with, security and whatnot, and he's talking to an imam, a local imam clerk, and he had their people with him. These guys were speaking English, these guys were speaking Arabic. And the army guy was saying, "Where is the power plant? We would like to fix it for you with our own tax money. Where is it? I am trying to help." And the imam was saying, "لا تعلي صوتك. هذا البلد بعد بلدي ولا تجيب لي المcDonald's مالتك هنا." Which translates to, "Do not raise your voice. This is still my country. Show some respect and don't bring your McDonald's over here." So I found myself on autopilot. Again, English was something that I've acquired from movies, and I just pulled over, and I walked up to the guy pulling security, who was yelling at me and saying, "Imshi, imshi," which means go away, something that they learned from the booklets that they handed in the military. And I said, "Dude, what's happening behind you is not going so well, and they will retaliate, and they don't understand you trying to help." And he's so scared. He's like, "Imshi, imshi." Then he stops, like, "Did you just speak English to me?" And I said, "Dude, I just called you dude." Which I always wanted to say. I really wanted. Like, yes, I'm a local, I speak English, and I can help. So he runs back, he's like, "Sir, we got somebody out here who speaks English." And he's like, "Well, get his ass over here." So I get over there, and I translate, and the situation gets diffused and turns into a very, very good collaboration. Fast forward a few months later, I'm an interpreter working with the US military in Baghdad. And while I'm doing that, I'm being a cultural liaison. So while we're not out on missions, rebuilding schools, diffusing situations, capturing weapon cliches, or interrogating insurgents, we would, shoot the shit. We would play cards. We would smoke hookah. They would tell me about life in America. I was hoping it was just like the show Friends. One time, I was in the back of a Humvee talking to my friend, the gunner. His name is Anthony Jackson. And he was asking me about life in Baghdad. He was really asking about the girls. And then when I tell him about how my dad smuggles banned books between loaves of flat bread, so he doesn't get caught, or how my friend Ali disappeared after accidentally bad-mouthing the president, he would go, "What? How can they get away with that? How is that even possible?" But he was American. What did he know? Rebuilding my country, doing all this work, making a difference, building these bridges were some of the happiest days of my life. Though it turns out that working with the Americans can get you on the insurgency kill list, one by one, interpreters disappeared and found in a very, very wrong state. I received dozens of threatening letters. These banners were on the street. Mind you, $50,000 only. I was very offended by that. I'm like, come on, give me something. Like 100, maybe a hundo, a little bit. But that didn't stop us, and we kept going, and we kept going. It just, like, I couldn't quit. It was just felt too right. This work was just so, it just meant so much. It gave a purpose, and we knew we were making a difference. Until they followed me home one day, and they found where I lived. So they left some threatening letters at the house, and they threw a grenade that went off and got the front with the kitchen and the windows. Thank God nobody got hurt, but that day I went to work on the FOB, Forward Operating Base, in South Baghdad, and I went to the S2, the intelligence officer, and I said, hey, this is what happened, and now it's different. It's my family that is on the line. And he goes, walk with me to the colonel's office and tell him what you just told me. So I went to Colonel Bauman's office. Colonel Bauman was from Minnesota. And I show him the letter. And him and I were working so closely. And he looks at it. And he said something unexpected. He looks at me dead in the eyes. And he goes, so are you going to let them win? That was not the reaction that I expected. I was expecting what other friends were saying is, okay, well, man, it's your family now. I mean, we don't want your blood or your family blood on our hands. But I was still conflicted. Colonel Bauman's words were different. I found myself as I'm walking away from that office with a no that kept getting louder and louder and louder in my head. And I decided I won't. So I went home and I talked to my dad. And I said, Dad, it's now you. And he goes, I've taken care of that family before you were around. And I will take care of that family after you. Do what you need to do. I'm so proud that I got someone in my family doing this type of work. So I packed my stuff and moved to live on the FOB with the guys, just being one of the soldiers, and never to see my family for another decade. Later on, my family had moved to a safe house, and then they got out of the country, and they sent us another message. Now, fast forward 2 years. After doing this work with one unit after the other, with the help of my Army friends, I come to the United States on a political asylum. First place I land was Manhattan. It was just like the show Friends. It was awesome. That was the happiest day of my life. And then fate brings me to Minnesota. That was the happiest day of my life. It was here when I found and I saw democracy in action for the first time. Colonel Bauman comes to my apartment and he goes, let's go. I'm going to show you something you've never seen before. And he takes me to a town hall meeting. It was in Lakeville. And I watched that. People from the far right to the far left stood up, spoke their mind. Nobody died. No one disappeared. Seeing democracy for the first time in action was like seeing a unicorn. It was the happiest day of my life. But I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what to do. I knew I was pursuing a political asylum, but there was no laws around that. It was just very brand new.
Heated up, a young Iraqi says he turned to American troops to help his country survive. He began working as an interpreter for soldiers stationed in Baghdad. It turned out to be the most rewarding and dangerous decision of his life. Laurie Amata has the story of an unexpected hero.
His name is Fadi. He grew up in Baghdad, comes from a well-to-do family, and he's well-educated. He was close to starting his career when the war in Iraq hit. He decided to risk everything for something he found in his heart.
To me, it wasn't a job, it was a mission.
When did you realize that you were in danger?
I still remember that one day, waved at me. That was just the beginning.
I know what will happen if he goes back.
With the attacks on Iraq,
Yeah, they were nice. You'd think you would survive.
a dictator fell.
There was hope. It was quiet.
But within months, the pain of change began.
Insurgents keep blowing up the pipeline.
You have a different kind of fear now.
Fadi, a well-educated university graduate, a budding computer engineer, welcomed the change, but realized the challenge of two cultures colliding.
Imagine that the people who are helping you out, you can't really talk to them.
Language barriers, big ones, creating big problems.
You just hear about them going off here and there and all kinds of people getting killed.
By the time Lieutenant Colonel Bauman, a newly appointed commander of the 121st Cavalry Division, arrived in March of 2004, a New York filmmaker was already entrenched, filming soldiers preparing for Iraq's first free election.
When it happens, you be ready.
I hope something good is going to happen.
to go to Iraq.
And documenting the struggle against a force getting stronger every day.
They went underground, hid themselves, reorganized, and came back out in the form of an insurgency.
There was a car accident, and there was shooting afterwards.
Insurgents who soon turned on interpreters, calling them traitors.
And they were on a campaign to kill as many as they could. But they also were paying in blood.
Where'd this come from?
Because they became targets.
At the interpreter's house, which once housed 30, the numbers have dwindled. Interpreters getting killed one after the other.
First it's occupied by 7, and then 6, 5, 4.
They do it very, very dirty, and they do it, unfortunately, too frequently.
It made Bauman and Fadi's work even more challenging. They were one of the few teams without masks, revealing their faces to local leaders as a show of trust.
It wasn't just translating, it was interpreting.
You can't make mistakes because people can get killed.
But when a friend, also an interpreter, disappeared,
And then they found him a head and a body thrown in some ditch.
Was it hard not to think you'd be next?
I knew I would be next. That's one of many threatening letters I got.
When did you realize just how serious the threats were?
When the shooting started.
his family was next.
They threw some grenades over the wall at his house.
Fadi knew something had to change. In his mother's words,
I'd rather have you alive somewhere else rather than dead here. And that's how I left. It was like a small miracle that happened.
Marisol, the filmmaker, her lawyer, and Bauman got Fadi a temporary visa.
That's awesome, to feel free.
Bauman, his friend, moved to Minnesota to retire, and brought Freddie with him.
We became brothers. I mean, there's no other way I can say it, but we became brothers.
And he said, Freddie, this is not right. We need to get you out of here. We need to pay you back.
I felt in my heart of hearts that I needed obviously some political assistance.
In Minnesota, the two say they spent the next few months contacting lawmakers.
I made an appeal to Congressman Klein. I also pursued Senator Coleman.
We wrote a presentation of the case.
With time running out.
It's disappointing and disheartening to know that I know he served as any soldier who was born in this country.
Freddie's visa expires in 2 days.
I lost everything back there. I've given it all up.
I know this. If he goes back to Iraq, he won't last a week. They will find him and kill him.
In Iraq,
there were signs out, $50,000 for Freddie's head.
He says it's the price to pay for making a choice.
Why did you do it?
It's that thing when you feel what you're doing is changing something.
I couldn't have done it without him.
Thank you.
He says it's the taste of success that almost feels like victory.
I always know that I've done something in my life that I can be proud of.
A victory that may be short-lived.
And I know the sacrifices that he made and the dangers he's in.
It's a suicide to go back there.
Last week, we contacted Senator Coleman's and Congressman Klein's office. Staff members for both offices say they did research the case, but found there was little they could do to help. In the meantime, Freddie and his lawyer have decided to file for asylum. They say it could take weeks, even months, before the case is considered. Back to you.
So after that, we got some attention. And we got some luck. And a political asylum was approved. Later on, to lead to me being a very, very proud and happy U.S. citizen. That was the happiest day of my life. And I got to see snow for the first time. And that was the happiest day of my life. And I got to work in technology, my dream. I got a job in St. Paul Public Schools. I was in the back room unpacking and imaging computers. I remember my buddy Jason, who used to work with me there, and he's, how are you so happy? Unboxing computers, you got a master's. And I would tell him, do you understand how lucky we are right now? I am able to live my dream, conceived when I was in middle school because of a movie, and I get to do that here. That is just amazing. And there's no way I will ever take that for granted, nor will I ever have a bad day. And sometimes when I feel like I'm having a bad day, I just pinch myself and remember how good we have it, how great it is to be free. Now, moving on to my recent addiction, and that is Audible. I realized that I really, really love consuming books through Audible. And these credits that, you know, for a credit you get a 2-3 hour book, were just so important, so precious. And recently I bought a Harvard Business Review article. It was a credit. But it was 13 minutes. I was so pissed, I wanted to return it. And they let you, so I was kind of smart, like, it's 13 minutes, let me listen to it, then I'll call them. And I still have that article, and I have not returned it yet. And what that article talks about is that triangle between government, academia, and businesses and producers, makers. And it talks about how in the mid-1980s, the United States was losing market in the semiconductor area. They're losing market share. And that was a big problem, not just in terms of market share, but also in terms of national security. And they were trying to figure it out, and they couldn't, until on the country level, they started what is known as a Semtech, and it's basically a consortium. And that was in 1986. By the mid-90s, the United States took its place back as a leader in that field. The trick here, what made that work, is those three legs were involved. Policies, politicians, academia, science and research, and also the businesses, the products, the manufacturers. That model was and is still so successful that it was replicated for other issues, and it was replicated to deal with things like cancer or renewable energy and batteries. I was talking to Sean Riley a little less than a year ago, the state CIO, and he was telling me about this conference and the people that are here. And the joke was, people come to these conferences and they use the Wi-Fi. Like, don't they know, like, you're gonna get hacked? So please, do not hack me. I'm one of the good guys. Or try, I might hack you back. But what he was also saying is these brilliant minds that attend this event and the collaboration that happens here. And I attended a few sessions, and I'm going to stay to attend as many sessions as I can before my airplane, because it is so amazing and so beautiful to see that coming together, and it is so inspiring. And I'm really proud and happy to stand here before you and work with you and attend these sessions amongst you, because that's what we should be doing. Just recently, it's gotten worse. State by state, recently Texas, 33 towns and cities, public school districts, they're getting attacked. And the scary part is getting monetized, and some people are paying up. And some don't, and they battle it. Kudos to them. The question that I have for myself and for you is, from our podium, are we going to let them win? Is there acoustics problem? Are we going to let them win? No. We're not going to let them win. We are definitely not going to let them win. And we're here to fight the good fight, and it really gives me goosebumps just to be here. One time I was talking to my sister who lives in Saudi Arabia, and she was telling me about life over there. And she was telling me how there are certain movies that are banned, and some freedoms are not okay. Women cannot have changing rooms when they go buy clothes. And I was livid. And I was like, what? How can they get away with that? How is that even possible? And she goes, wow, Fadi, listen to you. Who do you think you are? I smiled in my head and I said, I am an American. Thank you.